is Matt Mosley's Obstructed View. We're taping this on Thursday. You'll likely be listening perhaps Friday as you're getting ready for Baylor homecoming. I've got a high school game I'm attending tonight. My daughter's a varsity cheerleader. I may have mentioned that before at Lake Highlands. I'm playing Irving Nimitz tonight. Should be a pretty easy win. No offense to the Irving ISD, but they're just not what they used to be. And I've got you can't really see it. I've got my Lake Highlands like coach's gear on, so I may just wander. There it is. I may wander down the sideline, call a few plays tonight. I mean, it'd be fine with that. And here at Rogue, we do a number of things. We've got the Doomsday podcast I'm a part of with Ed Werder. And then we do the Boneyard podcast for Lake Highlands. Our high school, we're expanding our efforts and doing China Spring this year, but we're going to do more and more. And I think Lorena is part of the whole thing. And so we'll have more and more schools come in. But for our purposes, this is Obstructed View. And we've enjoyed our immediately, especially after these road games. Home games are a little tough, although Cam kind of pulls it off. We've got to go down, talk to Dave. It takes him sometimes forever. And literally by the time I get to my car, we're talking like 2 hours after the game. So I don't know. We'll experiment. If y'all desperately want me to do one after a home game, if something happens of great note, I might consider that. I might jump in. So, and some exciting things happening with the podcast, with Rogue, even my setup soon. I mean, you cannot believe the Rogue between Corey and Mike, some of the things they come up with from an equipment standpoint. I'm going to have a whole different look. I mean, I don't think I'm going to lose weight or anything, but I mean, a look, new boom mic, new camera. My background's going to be a lot sharper. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. It's going to be great. But I love that, I'm from the school of, hey, let's just, anything's fine. And Rogue's more like, no, let's do this all the way. And I like that. I'm supportive of that. I'm not always driving the bus on that. But it's been fun to do all these podcasts with Rogue. Bears and Oklahoma State get it on Saturday at 2:30. It's going to be an ESPN Plus game. Bears coming off a win. It's amazing, like, how differently you feel about this team and about the program right now. And all that could change. I mean, I don't want it to, but all that could change, of course, with the loss to Oklahoma State Saturday. They could fall back down to 3-5, and we could be talking about a coaching change again. And by the way, they're favored by 7. I mean, it's homecoming. Who would have thought? Think about just even a month ago, if we had said Baylor will be home on homecoming and they'll be favored by 7 over Oklahoma State, we'd probably be thinking, well, the Bears must be sitting here at like 5-2 or something like that. Well, they're 3-4, but trending up. Okay, we've had seasons, a couple of seasons ago, where they were in pretty good position, 6-3, feeling great, cratered. This is and finished that season 6-7. Last season was just like a full crater. It wasn't like there was never a rise. It was just a full crater. And now the Bears coming off huge win against Texas Tech. And it was exciting. 59-35. A lot of good things have come out of that. Sawyer Robertson now getting some appreciation, showing up on some awards list. He's had a really good year. I mean, again, he just 5 touchdowns. I mean, what a monster he is right now. And in fact, when it comes to passing touchdowns in the conference, I'm talking about just conference play. Bears sitting at 14 now. Colorado with Shador sitting at 10. Few teams maybe tied at 9. Bears are kind of getting it done. And there's a few reasons for that, which we can talk about. Josh Cameron's playing great at wide receiver. Offensive line has gotten so much better. Lingel over at left guard. Love how he's playing. They've tried to find some stability. They had tried several different players over at left tackle. Fugar is doing some good work. He's a big man, enormous hands. I guess they all do, but this guy's, just huge. And when he is kind of like Aranda said, when he gets his hands on you, you're in big trouble. And he's getting his hands on people, and that's why the line's playing better. I mean, they ran for. I mean, Sawyer was so great throwing the ball, and we should have been talking about him. 5 touchdowns, 274 yards passing. Give him all the awards. I mean, Sawyer's doing great things. But I mean, if you want to talk about the most amazing thing, it was to go from a team that really hasn't experienced that much success on the ground, other than Sawyer, occasionally Bryson Washington, to where last game they ran for 255 rushing yards. What? I mean, it's shocking. I know. It's Bryson had a great game, ran for 116 yards, caught balls for another, I don't know, about 30 yards. Thought he was good in the passing game. Just needs to look it in, and once he does, he can get out in the flat and do some things. I mean, I think there's some things they can do with Richard Reese. Bears will continue to get some players back that have been injured, but the offense is rolling right now. I mean, after that Tech game, how could you not feel great about that? Great balance. I mean, Sawyer throws for 274. You run for 255. That score looked like kind of like what Gundy was saying. Looked like an old Big 12 game. Let me tell you about this game, though, in particular, Oklahoma State. They've got a receiver. I've always loved this kid. He's a battler. He's been banged up, but he's playing through injury. In fact, he made some huge catches for Oklahoma State. They should have beaten BYU. It wasn't quite as gut-wrenching as Baylor's end of the game loss to Colorado. And then, of course, what happened in overtime there. With BYU just had to go the length of the field and win the game basically at the gun, and they did. They found a way to do it. But most of the game, Oklahoma State had been in charge. Rangel, young guy, they put in at quarterback. He ran the ball extremely well, and it looked like they had the makings of something. Well, he got hurt, and he got hurt pretty badly, and they had to go back to their veteran quarterback, Bowman. And the guy comes in, Alan Bowman, plays his tail off. Guy, you'll know his name because he used to be at Texas Tech. I think he went to Michigan at one point. So, I mean, he's bounced around, but when he's on, he can still throw it, and he's not as effective as a runner, but he can throw the football. And so he came in and helped lead Oklahoma State, and they had a great chance to win at the end of the game. I went back in preparation for this podcast. I mean, if you can believe that I prepare for these things, but I do occasionally. And I watched the Gundy press conference, and this happens Monday, and Mike walks in there, and I've seen coaches like this that are, for whatever reason, almost seem to function better after losses than after wins. And oh, by the way, he's had a lot of opportunities to do that because they are winless in the Big 12 and are sitting there at 0-4 in the Big 12. Again, played a lot better again. I think it's a very dangerous team. But the good news is, let's not act like Baylor's been winning enough to go, oh, we're just so happy with ourselves and we feel great and we're going to rest on our laurels. I mean, if that happens, run everybody out. Okay. I mean, I don't think it will. I think now, I'm not saying they can't lose this game because Oklahoma State played great, really well against BYU. I think Oklahoma State is a good, whatever they are, 3-5 type team. They got to go 3-2. So wait, they're 3-4, but anyway, they're really bad in conference is the main story. And not that the Bears are that much better, but the Bears do now have one conference win. This is a slugfest between a couple of teams. Still, I mean, I think the weird thing is, I was having this talk with a member of the Baylor hierarchy. The Baylor administration has some great friends of mine in it, and I was talking to one of them, and my point to them was Baylor's OSU's a little bit where Baylor was going into the Tech game. Desperate team. Now, not so much because of the coaching. I know I've seen headlines is Gundy on the hot seat? I mean, last year there was some talk of that, and then they bounced back and played in the Big 12 championship game. I just think a guy like that that's had an incredible career. I mean, it's like going back to Coach Taft. I mean, if you go that, or even Gary, and of course they finally forced Gary out, Patterson at TCU. But for the most part, when you have that many successful seasons and when you have that run of success, you get a bad year. Now, this has been worse than normal. This is not a typical down year. This is a really bad year for OSU. And Mike, you could tell he doesn't like the portal, doesn't really like the NIL, although, unlike Dabo, Mike has tried to, and Dabo, by the way, Clemson's gotten a lot better. Now, maybe you say the conference is down, whatever you want to call it. You got to say that Clemson's kind of bouncing back. Gundy, and this is where, and I need to go back and see what my friends at the Waco Trib, I noticed one of their headlines said comparing Gundy and Aranda. Well, there are a couple comparisons in that I think they both had an immediate dislike of the NIL portal. Mike nearly got himself fired during COVID over some kind of political thing that we don't need to get back into, but his players didn't appreciate it, and he somehow kind of turned that around, and he seems to have maybe formed better relationships with his players. I do think both of them had an aversion. They really disliked NIL, portal, all of that. Now, Gundy seems to be the one who was the driving force at OSU behind putting the QR codes on their helmets or jerseys or wherever. Maybe it's on their jerseys. I'm trying to think now. Hey, it's kind of like we pay players. I know everybody made fun of it and thought it was great, but that's thinking outside the box. That's interesting. I mean, if you can get on the screen your team's QR code for NIL, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, I love all this? Not really, but I think that is thinking outside the box, and Mike has done that. This is a scary team. This is the old wounded tiger theory. Quarterback who'd been benched. Presley's been banged up. This receiver I love. Is it Brennan Presley? I think it is. God, I love this kid. He's been with them for a long time. As Gundy talked about in his news conference, he'll go in the NFL. There's no way they'll be able to cut him, and he'll probably have a 10-year NFL career. He's a slot type guy. He's a lot like maybe a little bit bigger than Monterey. But this guy is a tough, incredibly tough player. He's got the speed, but he's just a great football player. And people sort of compare him almost like Malcolm Rodriguez, who used to be, he's now with the Detroit Lions. Just that same kind of, he was a linebacker, by the way, at Oklahoma State, just that same kind of toughness factor. This is a scary game because OSU did have a good performance. They got beat. They're either going to quit or they're not going to quit. I don't think they are. Gundy makes the point in the press conference I saw that to watch them practice, that you would think they were 6-0. You would think they're a 6-0 team. So much like Aranda, this is where the comparisons come in. Mike's a little more candid, and Dave's pretty candid about some things, but Gundy's the kind of guy that'll say, we coached well, our players were horrible this week. Or we had a horrible coaching, our players did the best they could, but our coaches were horrible. Like Mike will just come right out and call out his coaching staff, call out himself. He'll do all that kind of stuff. Mike, and they're both kind of funny. They're both quirky, funny. Mike is a little bit, Gundy's probably almost the most like Leach. I'm not talking really about his offense as much as I'm talking about more like his personality, his persona, all of that we still have in the game. I watched that news conference on a Monday after a gut-wrenching loss, and you fly back from BYU, and that dude sat up there for nearly 40 minutes with the media. He told stories. He made comments about NIL. He talked about the need for a college commissioner. He talked about contracts. He got into all that. And then he had a really interesting take on, why he no longer calls plays. He used to call offensive plays. He was asked because, of course, Aranda calls defensive plays um, for Baylor. Now, he was kind of asked, "Hey, is it easier to do defense than offense?" He he smartly said no, because I don't think he wanted to come off. But he did. He actually said that he gave it up because literally he was in the office from 6 in the morning till 11 at night, and it was taking too much time, and he just couldn't do it anymore. And he said he didn't even know if he was that good at it. Now again, that's just him kind of being funny. He was, I think, a pretty good play caller. And of course, that's kind of how he came up. But Gundy, I think most coaches, especially offensive coaches, just think, man, McCarthy does it for the Cowboys. There's a few pro NFL coaches. I guess McVay does it for the Rams. I mean, you're seeing fewer and fewer. You don't see many coaches that are calling their own defensive plays, and especially in the NFL. And maybe Aranda's like one of two or three in all of. I think he might be the only one calling his own defense in the P4 schools. I really do. Now, what Gundy said, I thought that was interesting, was that with defensive play callers, you really only come into a game with about 12 plays. Now, Aranda may laugh at that and go, "I got 30." I don't know what he would say, but that's what Gundy said. And he said you come in as an offensive play caller with about like 45 plays, or 40 to 45 plays, or something like that. And that's kind of what you're working with. So there is a little bit bigger template there, or a bigger menu of plays. Now, a couple of reasons I think, this is a scary spot for Oklahoma State, for Baylor to play Oklahoma State. Okay. Ollie Gordon, great tailback. He's going to be at least second round, could slip into first. Not having the season he wanted, came back to Oklahoma State. He's his size, speed. He's got everything you could possibly want in a running back. He's scary. Now, he's only averaging 70 yards per rush. Teams have had to key on him. I think what helped him get going against BYU, and by the way, he had 3 touchdowns against BYU, was the quarterback, Rangel, young quarterback, probably a sophomore, out there at Oklahoma State. Rangel is a running guy. And boy, that took some pressure off Ollie, and that allowed him to kind of get going. This quarterback, Bowman, not as much of a runner. You don't have to account for him that much in the run game. Does have a big arm, but I think you are going to. Baylor's done a good job. They had a great plan for Brooks, and that's a great player for Texas Tech, and has been Taj Brooks for a few years now. Great player, and the Bears had a good plan for him, and they slowed him down. So I think that's a really a feather in Dave Aranda's cap. He had one big breakout run of about 36, 38 yards, really good run. Well, I say that 38. He had one explosive, but the one I'm thinking about now is Bears had him on a 4th down play, and he got wide on the Bears, and they just didn't have anybody back there. And it was last line of defense. Okay, that was a breakdown, but it happens. It happens in a goal line type defense. So I don't want it to happen, but I don't see it as the end of the world. So Bears, here's everything at stake. You get to 4-4, then you start dreaming of all kinds of stuff. Bowl game, winning out, the fact that you're going to be favored in almost every game, except when you go to West Virginia. Just trying to think of everything they have left. We got Kansas, Houston. Yeah, I mean these are games. These are games the Bears should be okay with, and should be favored in. Well, they're favored by 7 against this team. Bears need to go. Need to get. Now the 3-4 need to get 3 more wins. It's out there. It's out there. There are games to be won, and they're going to be favored in. How many games they have left? Let's see. Got 5 games left. They probably will be favored in 4 of the final 5 games. Imagine that. Imagine starting 2-4 and looking as bad as they have at times, and having that 4 out of 5, you're going to be favored. Okay, so here's the things that are happening. Sailor Bear. Okay, old school Baylor got the Sailor Bear. We all love it. Those of us who went to Baylor. Those of us who didn't, they fake it pretty well and act like they know what they're talking about. That only the people that went to Baylor know the Sailor Bear. We know what it means. We know how much we love it. All right. And by the way, I love all the people who, if you adopt Baylor or you become an alum by choice, whatever, I welcome you in. I'm not one of these. I don't want anybody to hear that and go, Mosley's being a Baylor snob. But the people that have been raised on Baylor love the Sailor Bear. And so now the players seem to embrace it. That's cool. That's cool. All right. So I don't get into what they're wearing really. That's nor here nor there. It will be fun to have the blackout in a night game. And it'll be dark at kickoff for that as the sun will be going down. I think that's clocks change around then. And that's that TCU game coming up. And we're honoring the 13 and 14 teams at Baylor. That's going to be exciting. But for this game, homecoming crowd. Going to be a nice, I think students will be there. I think everybody's coming back. Going to be, all kinds of tailgates, all kinds of people coming back to Baylor. There's a little bit of juice with this team. There's a little bit of excitement around Sawyer Robertson. One game, one win did really make us feel differently about the program and the team. Now, so what they can't do is go out there and have one of those like BYU-like starts, Utah type start. They had pretty good starts against Colorado, Iowa State, and certainly, did well in that first half against Texas Tech, and in fact had a 10-point halftime lead. This really seems to me like a game where you try to set the tone early and you put some points on the board, and you don't get lured into one of these rock fights. And what I mean by that is this Texas Tech team, this Oklahoma State team is giving up tons of yards on defense, well over 400 a game. I think it's at like 444. They're giving up lots of points, lots of yards. They play hard, but the last thing you want to do is get into one of these. I mean, your offense has been too good lately, especially against Tech, to get lured into something where they're into some kind of defensive struggle. You got to early on, maybe it's some shot plays. You take some shots down the field, but again, Tech has 2 of their 3 most dynamic defensive players are out right now. And again, it's day to day. Mike's not great about sharing injury news like a lot of coaches. And so you don't know exactly how it's going to look, but they've been banged up. I thought they played okay on defense. Even though BYU had success and came back late, Oklahoma State actually played okay from a defensive standpoint. They played really well on offense. I think the line feels off to me here. I I get why they have Baylor up by 7. I just think, man, there's too much history. There's too much desperation from Oklahoma State. This feels like a extremely close game. I think a lot of Baylor fans after that Tech game are like, okay, Oklahoma State's down. Let's kick them while we're down. Let's get a decisive win. Would I love it? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? I do not. I do not. So, you know, this is a game that we used to talk about. You got to throw the run game open. These coaches believe in it. Dave believes in it. But the thing you've got to do from the start is, and boy, this happens to the Cowboys and it happens with McCarthy. If it's not there early, you can't just get away from it. Now, you can't extend the passing game and the screen game, and that's an extension of the run game. You can find some ways to try to get some things going. But the thing you can't do, you have to make this team respect your offensive line and your run game. Now, the great news is from a passing standpoint, Sawyer, first of all, he's good at moving around. He can help you off schedule, but no sacks. No sacks in that game. I mean, to be able to drop back and have a game where you have time and you're getting through your progressions, man, that is such an unbelievable thing. So I think this game is going to end up being, first of all, I think we're going to have a nice crowd. Bears are going to have a nice crowd. And Oklahoma State, most of their fans, I'd say they move on to basketball season, but they're not very good at basketball either. They'll have a decent following just because it's an opportunity. They got a ton of fans around the Metroplex, and they have a very loyal fan base. And so they will have some people show up. But the Bears need to take this thing over and not let them. If you let Oklahoma State hang around, they've shown. I mean, 2 years ago, and Bears need to remember that. 2 years ago, they embarrassed Baylor. If I'm thinking correctly, the 6-7 season. Usually these games happen fairly late in the season. I want to say they were part of the team that came in here. Yeah, I think that's right. And Bears have to come out in this game and really assert themselves early and play clean. And this is a great opportunity. Sawyer's gotten a lot of praise. Bryson's got a lot of praise. The other thing is they just beat up on Joey McGuire, so I'll use one of Joey's old sayings. Take 3. Go out and take 3. You have to be able to win the turnover battle. You say it like every game. I think it's extremely important here that you get a couple of takeaways at home. You win the takeaway battle, and if you can get 3 of them, that's incredible. How do you do that? You got to hit the quarterback. Pass rush has to be there, and the great thing about this pass rush is you sort of have a sitting duck. Not that he can't move around a little bit, but from a quarterback, rush lanes and everything, I mean, I would say even this guy is even less of a threat than Baron Morton was. And you did what you had to do against Baron Morton. You hit him, you sacked him, you picked him off. And at the key point of that game, when you had responded to Tech and you had gone up 31-21, when that game was still in doubt, third quarter, you get a pick on Morton. He doesn't recognize the coverage. Jenkins is sitting on the route. Bears get a huge pick. So at 4-4, if Bears win this game, then you can start dreaming about whatever you want to dream about. Bowl wins, running the table, winning out. I mean, I've heard people talk about 8-4. To me, that's still too crazy. That's too crazy to talk about. Now, 7-5, give everybody raises, give everybody a huge pat on the back. Let's have a celebration. I think they're going to drop one down the stretch. So 7-5 would be incredible. The thing is, though, the old adage, go 1-0. Come on. Come on, that's what you have to do. Now, um, real quick, basketball note. Big 12 Media Days, VJ Edgecombe, man, he was so awesome there. Um, I mean, this is going to be a fun team. It's going to be a different looking Baylor team. This is they're not as long. They got great guards. The report was out that they in a close scrimmage the other day against A&M. Now I think they've played Grand Canyon, and which is where Scott's brother and go is a coach, and Texas A&M in some close scrimmages. Okay, and you know what that is, of course, is they don't really put out any stats. They don't release box scores. Coaches agree to kind of keep things. Now that doesn't mean things don't kind of leak out a little bit, how certain people looked and all that kind of thing. I'll just tell you that they beat, and this was a box score. I think Rothstein maybe put this out, 80-72. They beat Texas A&M. The way I understand it, A&M was winning at halftime. Bears went on a big run, like a 12-0 spurt, got control of the game. And then 80-72 was probably the biggest lead Baylor had the whole game. Who stood out? I think everybody looked fine. I think it's going to be it's going to be a really good shooting team. It's going to be a good transition team. And I think the thing that Baylor fans are going to love, they're going to turn you over. And from what I'm hearing, I mean, Baylor's had some great freshmen. But if you want to look at Keontae, George, if you want to look at Jacoby Walter, and we talked about who was willing defenders, who tried to play defense, all those kinds of things. There is some thought, I believe, that VJ Edgecombe is gonna be the best of those three that I just mentioned. Now Sohan ends up, he ended up becoming a really snarly defender, but I'm kind of thinking more in the guard range is what I'm thinking about, and I think VJ is going to be there. VJ is going to make some extremely explosive plays. Jaden is looking good in as far as like pulling up, catch and shoot threes. He's obviously worked on his game a ton, from what I'm hearing. And Omier is kind of like I think we're going to show up and see that. Boy, somebody told me he's almost like from a physical specimen standpoint, it's almost like Rico Gathers, Ish Wainwright type body. Okay. Like he's going to be, and he's a true 6'7". He's going to be immovable. And once he has you pinned down there, I think he's going to be able to go to work on you. And he could even slip outside and shoot the three. And then, I think some people wonder, what's Roach like? What Rob Wright like? Man, these are really positionless, interchangeable guards. I will just say that, and this is very encouraging to me. I'm hearing that Rob Wright, the one of the great point guards in America from a incoming freshman standpoint from Montverde, but we didn't know, like we knew VJ was probably going to be one and done and going to get picked early. I don't think Rob Wright's going to be one and done, but I think he's going to be ready from day one to get plenty of minutes and plenty of rotation time. So if you're thinking of him like Miro Little, you may have the wrong guy in mind. I love Miro, but I think Rob is going to be, especially given who he competed against and where he's coming from at Montverde, and now how he's looked in these practices, I think he's going to be ready to give you some great minutes early on, whether it be like 15 to 20 minutes, somewhere in there. But you think about it, Jaden, Langston. By the way, Langston did not play in this. They're still, being very cautious, but he's slowly but surely coming back. He's been cleared for all basketball activities. So slowly but surely he'll do his thing, and I think he'll be ready. What role will he have? Don't know yet. Don't know about that. But, I mean, guard-wise, it's just like VJ, Roach, Jaden, Langston, Rob Wright. What did I just name? 5? I mean, like 5 legit, tremendous guards, and then Celestine. I think you're gonna like him. He's got kind of Bridges size, and he may shoot it. It took Bridges a while. His final year at Baylor, obviously, he became a really nice and effective, efficient 3-point shooter. I think Celestine's going to be that day one. He's going to be that day one. So, I mean, I mean, if he comes off the bench, which he probably will, they're going to be looking to get him shots. So, anyway, I kind of, through my various people, I can get a bit of a feel for how some of these secret things are going. And I just wanted to share some of that with you. What I'm observing, what I'm hearing about with the team. Man, they're going to be fun. They're going to look different. It's not the all airport team where you got skyscrapers. Some teams play like that. Some teams want to have those monster front courts. I think K-State's going to be a little bit like that. Kansas is always big. They perform better when they got one of those monster front courts. Bears are not that. I mean, Ojanwin is a big guy. Asamoah's probably not real ready yet to give you that much. He's 6'9". So they're not going to be the skyscraper. I mean, Houston will come at you in waves of those dudes. Here's 6'7". Here's 6'8". Here's our 6'9" guy. Oh, here's a 7-footer over here. Somebody named JoJo is going to come running in here. It's a scary group. This Baylor team is just going to come at you in waves. They can shoot it, they can turn you over, and they can play defense. We've got no problem with any of those things. All right. And so who's the best team in this conference? Well, we'll say Kansas to start, and then we'll see where it goes. Okay. And at times we'll look at a game and go, I think Iowa State is. I think Baylor is. I think U of H is the best team. I think that all of that could happen. Maybe even Arizona. Probably ought to throw Arizona in there too. All right. Love being with you guys. Love doing this. And soon, perhaps even the next obstructed view, we're gonna set up some stuff, and you're not gonna believe it. Like my background, it'll just be like it'll be like, what is that stuff called? 5K or whatever, 5G. It'll be the big time, 4K. Used to be on the rear projection TV, the 1080, the high res. I mean, who would not want to see this face in high res? I think that's really what America's looking to do. All right, there you are. Since that's my little logo there, I'll put them off. I'll put them on to say goodbye. It has been obstructed view. Let me give you my prediction for the homecoming game. I've got the Bears. I don't want a rock fight. For some reason, I'm kind of thinking it could happen, but I'm going to pick against that. I think the Bears win this 35-28. Right on the line. That's a push. If you get the 7-point line with Vegas. 35-28. These teams are going to score. This is not going to be easy, but the Bears pull away and get a homecoming victory. It is Matt Mosley. This is Obstructed View.
We are Rogue Media Sports.